and welcome. Thank you for joining me for part 2 of this conversation. As always, I'm Abbie. This is Stories Lived, Stories Told. And here's my question. How can you take some time for reflection and also to do some looking forward? It is the end of 2023, the end of the year, and the end of this podcast season. This is the last episode of 2023. So I'm feeling very much in a place to do some reflecting, which you have gotten to hear in part 1 of this conversation, and we'll continue that today in part 2 of this conversation between myself and Marit. And then I think the other part of taking some time to reflect is to start looking forward and thinking about what our hopes are, what our wants, our desires are for the coming year or for the coming season or coming period of our life. What do we want and how can we make that happen? So in this episode, you are going to hear a little bit of both of those things from me. So let's jump into this, the last episode of season 2. Part of what makes me feel like I can embrace all of these growing pains and I can embrace these new ways of being, like, leaning into emergence and mystery and asking more questions and giving answers and exploring new conversations and new stories with people. Part of the reason I feel like I can do that in the podcast is because of the support that you all have given me, you and Kim and the board of the CMM Institute, because you're teaching me so much by giving me the space to be this way and to be creative and to be guided and really guided by these CMM-ish ideas. You know, I wouldn't be producing the same podcast if I wasn't getting that from all of you.
And I think that brings up a really important aspect of this whole conversation as well, which is that everything happens in relationships.
Yeah. Yes.
Isn't it? You know, okay, you are the podcast host.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm the one interviewing you, or maybe not. Maybe we're just having a conversation.
Sure.
You know, but it happens between us. Everything would look different if we were just looking at our own navels and sort of fishing from what we have inside. And if you think,
yes,
if I think certainly about my own wish for perfection and my own harsh voices that I have in my head that keeps telling me off for this, that, and the other now and again. Luckily less, but still, even at my age, they still pop up, you know.
You're still becoming, Marit. You're still becoming.
I'm still becoming.
Right.
I'm still becoming you, thankfully.
I've learned a lot about collaboration from that and that being in relationship that you're talking about.
I can imagine if it came just from me or just from you or just from anyone, how full it would be of pain and of a sense of inadequacy maybe, or anger or fear or whatever. So being in safe relationships, being in conversations where we do what you model all the time in your conversations throughout the year. Open, curious, loving emergence, being present, you know, daring pain, daring vulnerability.
Yeah.
All those things happen in the relationship. And they are about making the moment, aren't they?
Yes.
We're making those moments. This right now we have the chance to we are in the moment of making a better social world.
Yeah.
Just because we are sharing what we're sharing. And just like Romy's.
Yeah. And to build on that, it's taking me back to one of my last conversations of the first season with John Burnham that I feel like I just spaced because it's kind of saying the same thing, but I was reminded of it in the wording that you just used, that he talked about changing the moment in the moment. And that's, what Romy was saying about making the better social worlds in your current better social world.
And that's what we have, isn't it? It is that moment. It is this moment.
Yeah.
Not that moment. It's this. Right here, right now.
Yeah.
And it happens in relationship. And whether it's like in a conversation, like we're having a spoken out conversation, or it's an internal conversation, because we have these internal conversations, which again also takes the time out to reflect, time out to listen to that internal dialogue. What does it sound like?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is the quality of the internal dialogue that I'm having? Is it one that is conducive to being part of making better social worlds?
Yeah.
Or is it not?
I'm thinking about, again, I maybe get more value out of the podcast than anybody, because so many of the things that we talk about do show up in my life, and I get to practice them and draw connections to the things that I was speaking about. And as far as moments where I feel like I've changed the moment in the moment and really been able to put CMM to practice in that way, is recently I was having a conversation with my partner, Trent, and it wasn't an argument, but just like, I didn't feel good. We were like missing each other and not understanding each other, and how I was feeling and how he was feeling, and just kind of felt bad. And we kind of had paused, and neither of us maybe felt like we had more to say. And it was just, it felt like it was just kind of going to end in with a bad feeling, bad taste in your mouth. But I think we were both like, okay, that conversation was what it was. We'll just kind of, stew for a minute and then move on and whatever. But I instead said, I feel like you're frustrated because of X, Y, and Z, the contents of the conversation and what I was feeling. Because I think he was feeling frustrated and I was feeling frustrated for different reasons. And so when I said, I feel like you're feeling frustrated from X, Y, Z, is that fair? Can you tell me if that's true or where I'm wrong? And that was my way of reaching out and saying, let me put my blah feelings aside and my own frustration aside for a minute, not to ignore my own frustration, but just temporarily put it aside. And this is my attempt to try to understand you. And the whole conversation turned around, and I'm so glad it did. And we both got a lot more out of it. And in the end, we were on the same page. We did see each other in this new way. And I was like proud that I was able to do that in the moment, because more often than not, it is in reflection that I'm like, oh, I could have done this thing, could have done something differently if I was, really living into my communication perspective. I could have acted differently. And this is one of the moments where I actually did it. And so that's kind of the slow, I celebrate that. It's kind of that's the part of becoming, is that every once in a while I do something like that. And I'm like, oh yes, this is my like evidence that all of the models and all of the concepts that CMM talks about, like, they're right. Like there's something there. So I was just able to approach with curiosity and ask for his story and create something new together and co-create and collaborate. And all of these CMM-ish ideas felt like they were in play in that moment. And so if I said, I could have very easily not asked that question, and we could have ended and it would have been fine and we'd be fine, but it also didn't have to be that. And so in that moment, I was able to change the moment in the moment. And that was exciting.
What a beautiful story.
Yeah.
It's really, and what it makes me think is the importance of practice, that this doesn't come by itself.
Yes.
You couldn't have, you need a shorter and shorter span to do that reflection now from what you did when you started out being aware of these things. And now suddenly it's like biting your nails, it's like a habit. You find yourself, in the beginning, you find yourself with your fingers in your mouth, and you remember, oh, I was going to stop biting my nails.
Right.
And you do that several times. And that's a simple thing like stopping biting your nails.
Right.
And then you find your hand on the way up towards your mouth, and you think, oh no, I wasn't going to I was going to stop biting my nails. I put it back down again. And you build, you practice, and it takes time. And this was a very great example of you have been practicing. It was available to you in the moment. You weren't had by your feelings. You were had by your practice. You made a choice. Your practice kicked through.
Yes. I love thinking about it as a practice. That feels really true.
That's what we need to do. We just need to practice.
Yes.
That's what we do in Cosmo Kids, you know?
Yep.
Kids get to practice again and again and again, becoming aware of their emotions, becoming aware of what the emotions the other children could have, would be in that situation if they were experiencing similar things, realizing that you have a choice, that it's not that you're not going to have the feeling. It's just that you can do something about it. You can do something different to actually acting out and screaming or hitting or, you know, whatever. Throw yourself on the floor and bang something or whatever.
Yeah.
So it is practice, practice, practice.
Yeah. And it's like, we don't talk about community, you know, people talk about maybe like a mindfulness practice is kind of the closest thing, which mindfulness has so much to do with this. You know, if you could use the metaphor of like a sports team, you practice.
You do.
You practice together, you drill. And then the day of the big game and it all comes together. And if you are playing a sport like soccer, football, there's improv in that. You practice, but you don't know what the other team's going to come out with. You don't know if someone's going to get hurt. And then you have to have a new person come in. And how's the dynamic going to be together? And where are you going to go on the field? And how are you going to be feeling that day? You're practicing your mindfulness or your communication perspective. And then all of a sudden, like me the other day, you're in the game.
Yeah.
And that practicing pays off and there's some improv, but you got to do what you did in the game, so to speak, because you practiced.
Yes.
And so that feels like a funny comparison, but also useful because improv is the other big thing that I've really learned about this year, especially in my conversation with John Weissman, who made me do improv games at the end of our episode, which when he said, let's do a game, I got nervous, but it was, you know, we just clapped and said numbers, but it opened up a lot about myself and a lot of good conversation. And that's why he said he does that with, you know, executives and the businesses that he consults with, and breaks down some of your walls. So I've been thinking about improv a lot more, and it ties back to the very beginning of this conversation in that I think the distinction he made is that some people confuse when you say improv with winging it, and that's not it. And that improv, if you've ever seen like improv comedy, like a group do improv comedy, then it actually comes from a place of being so prepared in one sense, having such a good understanding of comedy and timing and language and the relationships between you and the other people doing the improv. It's being so prepared in that sense, having such a good knowledge and foundation that you can go in without a script. So definitely not winging it. And that's, I think, the perfect balance. Not, again, perfect, here I go. That's the balance that I am seeking and getting better at finding this year, because perfectionist Abbie in the past would have been the person that said, well, the opposite of being really prepared is winging it. And I can't do that. But now, again, it's more complex, the story I'm telling around that. And so I'm able to say, okay, in me showing up to my conversations differently. In the very first conversation I had with Barbara and Robbie, who was my old boss and is my friend, I probably sent them like 10 or 12 questions in advance. And now I maybe send people 3. Big difference. And better, because there's no way to cover all those questions if you want to find any depth in the conversation. But that's not something that I would have done or let happen if I didn't have this more nuanced understanding of improv and emergence and mystery, to be able to say, no, I'm actually so prepared and I'm so trusting of myself as the practiced host of this podcast and my guest as someone who's going to be able to articulate their stories well and be curious with me, that I'm going to give us a little more room to improv and a little more room for emergence.
More courage and more trust.
Yep. Yes.
And I guess the CMM language of what you just described would be using the tools.
Mm-hmm.
Having practiced the tools enough that you can actually put them aside and they just are available to you when you need them. We've been talking about mystery, and mystery is one of the concepts used in CMM, and you've been talking about it throughout the year in various conversations.
Yeah.
For many people, I think that is a kind of a difficult material. What is mystery? What does it mean in this context? When you just before were talking about, this whole podcast thing might be best for me and not so much for everybody else because I get what I need when I need it.
Yes.
And I have the conversations that seem to be just meeting my needs at that very moment. That's the kind of thing that I would call mystery.
Yeah.
Mystery is in the little things of serendipity and little chances that come together, that you have to notice them because they happen all the time and they are mysterious.
Yes.
There's something about them. You think, gosh, I thought about that person and she called. How was that?
Yeah, right.
For example,
yes.
Or I needed to address this theme in my life, and here we are talking about it on my podcast.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, and it happens all the time. It's interesting. One of the things that I've spent this year doing is going back through all of the season 1 episodes and putting those in a format where they can be on YouTube, just so more people can find them. And then another thing I've done is from some of those mini-sodes is what I called them in season 1 that were more just purely educational. And it was just me talking about different CMM-ish things. I've been going back and also creating YouTube videos of those that are 2 or 3 minutes and educational, because I wanted to make those with kind of myself, my past self in mind, because as a student, I certainly was, probably Googling coordinated management of meaning or looking for other resources to help me kind of fill in what I was learning in the classroom. And first of all, those little videos have gotten so many views. So I'm right. There are other students like me or other people are just trying to learn about it on their own. But I see like people are engaging with that. But I say that to say that one of the videos I just made based on one of the episodes was about coherence, coordination, and mystery, which, yes, when we talk about mystery and CMM, it is usually coupled with coordination and coherence. And those are, I don't know what language you would use, but I see them kind of like 3 tenets, 3 elements of CMM, not the whole thing, obviously, but three important facets of the theory. And I think you're right in saying that mystery is the hardest to grasp for people or to really embrace or embody, because I think kind of if coherence comes first, you can kind of say, okay, yeah, like, yes, I want to make sense of the things in my world. Okay. And then, okay, in order to do that, I have to coordinate. Oh, that can be kind of hard. You're in relationship with people. You can't know how they're going to be. And it is work to meet people where they're at, but okay, that's next. And then even in the video I made, the definition for mystery is like everything else. There's coherence, there's coordination, and then there's everything else. And that's mystery. The things that you can't make coherent. It's everything else.
I love that.
So it's like, okay, maybe you can really feel like you're getting coherence. You understand that as a concept or something in your life. You're you're starting to practice coordination, and then there's mystery, and where do you start, and how does it play in? But Kim and I have talked about before that you really can't talk about coherence and coordination without talking about mystery. And to me, that even kind of fits into that told stories and untold stories.
Untold stories.
You know, and thinking of mystery as the untold story side of thing.
And that there is always more. Always
exactly.
more.
Yeah, right. In that kind of sense. Because then you can start looking at the mystery and maybe, I don't know, maybe not understand it, but embrace it as a force in your life, or however you'd want to say that. But there's always more.
Always more. Which is rather beautiful, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's kind of nice to think about, and that underscores your always coming back to curiosity, staying open. There's always more. And that's the mystery part.
Yep.
It's not harder than that, and that's how hard it is.
I have moments where I worry about how much longer am I going to be able to do this podcast? How many more conversations are there to have? And that's really not something I need to worry about because there's mystery.
Yeah.
There's endless conversations to have and endless things to learn and endless podcasts.
Endless podcasts. And having said that, you do one podcast at a time and you do one season at a time. So one of the things that you're also talking about, and we've been talking about in this conversation, is hope. And then I guess we need to sort of think about ending this conversation somewhere as well. So looking around in the world right now, it's hard to find hope if you look at the sort of public media picture. Yes. It's painful, actually, I find.
Yeah.
To stay open to that kind of to what is presented in the media. I sometimes wish we had a media that could tell other stories, and some media do. They actually emphasize telling the other stories as well, stories of good and stories of people supporting each other and standing up for each other and creating a good social world as they live in it.
Yep.
And with all that, what's giving you hope?
Well, to start in a podcast specific way, because that's easier than talking about the rest of my life, which I will get to. It gives me hope that I have had just exponential growth in terms of listeners of the podcast from the first year through this year. And that makes me feel hopeful, and it makes me want to keep going because people are listening, and if they're coming back, it means they are getting something from it. And maybe that's even a little bit of a mystery to me. I don't know what it is that makes people keep coming back. And that answer is probably different for every single person. But that's okay to leave that as mystery. And so I'm just going to keep trying to do what I've been doing and seeking out what I would consider meaningful conversations and keep practicing, keep learning. And that makes me feel hopeful for what the podcast can continue to be and what meaning I hope that I can help bring to people's lives through the conversations that I get to share. And in my own life, I feel hopeful because of my growing pains, I guess. Like I said, I'm not just in pain, period. I'm framing them, I'm seeing them as pains that are occurring because I am growing. And so if I can take the pain I'm in as evidence of growth, then like I said, I know that I'm growing, and that in and of itself is hopeful. And again, the very first idea from CMM that ever really stuck with me, that still again blows my mind, is that we're active participants, and we actually get to have a say in the social worlds we create and the way we show up to each other. And so that gives me hope that even if right now we're not doing our best by each other, that we still could.
Yeah.
That's my hope. Those are the things that give me hope.
Beautiful. I add that as a layer on your painting.
Yeah.
Just sort of a layer on your painting.
Mm-hmm.
That regardless of how many layers underneath, that's always going to be part of it. So, Abbie, there's a new season coming up.
Yes.
Tell us about it. Well, where you are at now.
Yeah, right.
What you've got to, yeah.
Still lots of mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But it is something I've started thinking about and having conversations about. And again, there's been a mix of excitement and nervousness. Nervousness in the sense of, I thought, where are all these people going to come from? Who are all these conversations going to be with? And then already, again, one of the many ways that I lean on the CMM Institute's board is that I've already gotten many great recommendations from them. And that has been my favorite way to find guests of the podcast, kind of a friends of friends. And yeah, just finding people that I know have actually like touched people's lives because I've spoken to those people, and that's why they got recommended. And so that, is something that will work itself out. So I have nervousness around that, but not too much because I trust that it will work itself out. What I'm excited for next year is I'm conceptualizing the episodes or the podcast as a whole in a different way. In that last year, I don't know if I ever said this on the podcast or it was just in conversation with all of you. My goal was to I said, talk about CMM without talking about CMM. Or as John Burnham would say, think theory, talk ordinary. Because I didn't know am I losing people when I say coordinated management of meaning? Am I losing people when I talk about communication theory? It's just, my hope was to bring all the good of CMM out of academia and being kind of gatekept there and by that language and into people's lives. And so I just wanted to be creative and explore different ways of talking about it and of sharing CMM with people without getting bogged down in the language so much. And I'm glad that I did that. And I think I've had a lot of really beautiful, meaningful conversations. But now I'm feeling ready to embrace CMM fully and not hide it. And part of the reason is my most listened to episode is my very first ever episode that's introducing what coordinated management of meaning is. All of the short videos I've done on YouTube that are educational about different models within CMM have hundreds of views. And so I'm seeing now there is a need and a desire that I'm perceiving from the audience to really dig deep and, kind of go lean more fully into CMM and lean more fully into the practice of CMM. And so that is my hope for how I want to approach my next conversations in season 3, to be unabashedly CMM-ish and to really embrace that language of taking a communication perspective and what that means. And so in my head, I'm already thinking that I'll, probably change up the way I name the conversation so that they read more like, each one could be a communication perspective on blank. And that way we get to talk about a lot of different topics, but all using a communication perspective. And that being the kind of route to a better social world. And that came about really from work that I've done with the Cosmopolis 2045 project, because we've been asking ourselves, what is this and who is it for and who do we want it to be for? And originally, I think we thought, okay, well, students of communication at colleges and universities would use this. And then the more we've talked about it, we thought, well, actually, maybe it's because the website includes stories on government and education Okay, maybe we're in the political science classrooms then. Maybe we're in the education classrooms then. And so instead of how can we bring a communication perspective to the people who are already learning about a communication perspective, I think it's more how can we bring a communication perspective and reach the people in their wheelhouse, in their topics, in their fields of study.
Wow.
And so that's kind of what I'm thinking I want to follow as well for the next year, to say, if I can have a diverse range of topics on my podcast, which I hope to continue to do, can I invite more people into a communication perspective? The goal is to just be one big invitation in, and each episode is its own path into embracing a communication perspective.
That I am looking forward to.
I feel excited about that and hopeful.
Yes. Well, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
I really, really enjoyed speaking with you, Abbie.
I really, really appreciate you being the one to interview me. I was not even interview, you know, that's not really the word that I like, but to ask questions of me and to be my conversation partner in this podcast. I was very glad that you said yes when I asked for it to be you.
I have one last question.
Okay.
If you were to think about the conversation we just had now, what stands out for you in this moment as sort of going to be tickling your ear for a little while, or, you know, playing on your mind, or
the practicing of it all? Not necessarily because that is a new idea to me, but because the way that we spoke about that and the way that I'm looking back through our whole conversation with that idea in my head sparked new things for me today. And I guess if I was going to go back and add one more answer to your question before of what makes me hopeful, it's that we can practice, and that I feel like a really good way of embracing CMM-ish ideas is through seeing it as a practice. That in and of itself feels like a door into understanding CMM better. So I'm glad for the perspective that you've brought me today, and hopefully people listening maybe also connected to that idea, and you're just practicing all the time, and that feels like it gives so much room for grace for yourself as you do practice, and then an ability to celebrate when you're able to put that practice to use and do the thing in the moment. And like you were talking about with habits, build it as a habit. That's what makes it feel that CMM can be really practical, that you can actually use it in your own actual life to make your relationships and your own social world better. That's how it goes from a theory to being something more in your practice of it.
On that note, Abbie, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that is all for part 2 of this conversation. That is all for season 2. It was really valuable for me to take this time with Marit and answer the questions that she prompted me with, such insightful and wonderful questions. I enjoyed taking this time to be reflective and to share with you some of my hopes for the upcoming year as well. So I hope you can just find this space in your life, whether it is by yourself, maybe you're journaling, maybe you're writing in the notes section of your phone, or maybe you are having a conversation like this one with people that you're close to in your life. But whatever it looks like, I hope that you can find the space and the time to do some of that reflecting, because I think it is so incredibly helpful. And if we really are trying to live into a communication perspective, then reflection's a huge part of it, because those are the moments where we start to see our patterns and we get to use our imagination to consider what kind of different choices we could be making and how we might make new choices in the future. This is how we reflect on what it is we're making, and then also decide what we want to be making. If it's something different, if it's the same, what do we need to do to make what it is we want to be making of our lives, of our relationships, our communication, and our social worlds? As always, I'm supported by the CMM Institute for Personal and Social Evolution. This podcast is one of many amazing initiatives that are designed to help move us toward that better social world and to really make a communication practice accessible and practical. I'm excited to share that support from the CMM Institute will continue into 2024. So I will see you back here in January for season 3. In the meantime, I will be taking a break from publishing episodes, so nothing the next coming weeks. But I will see you back here in January, where we will start off the year with some cool short conversations I was able to record with some young people who are also working with the CMM Institute. We are calling them our Cosmo Teens. They're working on a comic book that's just about ready to come out. So we got to hear some conversations from them about what that process has been like for them. And that is a continuation of the Cosmo Kids and the Cosmo Tweens activities that currently exist that the CMM Institute has put out. I'll link to all of these things in the description so you can learn a little bit more about what I'm talking about there. Okay, I think that is all our business for 2023. Thank you so much for showing up, for continuing to show up across all these episodes in the past 2 years. I hope you'll continue to show up in 2024. I will be here, so I invite you to join me. Thank you so much for being curious, and thank you for being a part of this story. I'm Abbie, and this has been Stories Lived, Stories Told. I'll see you next year.